risky skipper package. So once you add all that in, that is actually pretty terrifying for an aggro lineup. Even just one Kargath Prime coming out, you could just lose the game off the back of that being able to kill something, right? Getting that 10 armor, game looks over from there. We do see as well the Demon Hunter actually being banned out by AyRoK, and AyRoK losing his warrior does mean that Zhym is going to have that druid warrior priest, but his priest is Highlander, and the druid, as ever, is susceptible. Even if you build it, to be a little bit better versus aggro, it is susceptible to an aggro matchup. So we'll have to see how this plays out as we do get into game number 1. AyRoK starting on that Hunter versus Zhym's warrior.
Zhym here just holding on to the Corsair Cache as expected. Does hit the Anchor, which is pretty clutch as well. Generally, when you are playing the pirate version of the deck, which is a little bit better in these aggro-based matchups, you do want to be hitting that most of the time. So the fact now he has the guaranteed Anchor and the Corsair Cache to pick up a Wrench Caliber if he needs it later on, he's in about as good a shape as he could be in this early game.
I was a little bit surprised as well with AyRoK's mulligan. Throwing away all the secrets 100%, you don't want to actually draw those, you want to get them through the Face Stalker. But keeping the Tour Guide is one of the one drops I actually don't like to keep with this Hunter. I think it feels like a combo card more than anything else, not a you want to play it on 1 or 2 and just bank that free hero power early. It's definitely one you want with a Face Stalker. So I think I would have leaned towards actually throwing that as well, but AyRoK did choose to keep it, so we'll see if it pays off for him.
Zhym already considering here how valuable a Wrench Caliber even is to him at this point, and he says, you know what, less valuable than 2 armor when I'm playing against Face Hunter.
Yeah, and of course, this matchup better for the warrior build here for Zhym, because he does have Armor Smith, does have some of those anti-aggro cards and so on. But it's still not an easy matchup by any means, because the Hunter can get so much damage through, and a lot of the AoE and just removal in general does not really line up against the awkwardness that the Hunter kind of throws minions at you that are so small that your AoE is actually prepped for bigger targets. Yes. So it actually gets very janky to deal with a few small minions every turn. Like, you don't normally go super wide, and you don't normally go really tall either with like one big minion, so it's kind of just the right shape to be frustrating for Warrior to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Especially if you're playing against the version that has cut Anchor and Risky Skipper.
Oh, 100. You just win.
Like, at that point, like, not only do they not have a weapon that they feel good about sending into any of your minions, then just you also remove just the Whirlwind effect on Risky Skipper from the deck as well, which is nothing lines up in a nice way against anything.
And you can see, just glance at this board, yeah, nice Blade Storm. You know, like, it just doesn't really achieve much. You can play around Blade Storm like any turn of the game with this deck as well. It's very powerful. And already, Zhym just being hyper pressured down, and will just need to attack to get a minion here. Maybe he just has to go for attack on the 3/3 and just try and activate the Skipper this turn.
It's looking very much like it. Skipper, Raider. Weave the armor in here as well. Use the Battle Rage. Okay, I like it.
Oh, Kargath, that's a big boy. Okay.
It's a big boy, but it's a slow boy.
It is. It is. But sometimes you just need to draw that Prime to win a game. I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes that's just going to happen. Zhym already massively on the back foot. Now, great timing for the Phase Stalker. Going to get these secrets active and start being very frustrating for Zhym to deal with. AyRoK is playing the 1 Pressure Plate, 1 Pack Tactics, double Freezing Trap build. So, of secrets. This is the all-rounder approach, but there are different sets of secrets you can run if you're fearful of certain matchups.
Yeah, obviously you can play Explosive Trap if you're super fearful of like trying to win aggro races, that kind of situation. You can play purely Pressure Plate and Freezing Trap if you just absolutely want to hard snipe Druid and just make sure they can never win that matchup.
Yep. That's what I run on ladder, and I'll tell you now, a secret tip, it's pretty successful. They just don't beat you if you get secrets.
Just
people playing Druid on ladder.
Just piece by piece, though. AyRoK's starting to run out of steam. He's just a few points short the way this works out. And that's the problem with the Warrior matchup specifically. Even though this is a good matchup now, you do have to keep minion presence going, because you can't just slowly work your way down to a kill command lethal by pressing hero power like you can against other classes, because the two hero powers just cancel each other out. So you have to stick minions, you have to hit with weapons, you have to get minions to go face. You need sources of repetitive damage. That's what AyRoK doesn't have right now.
Yeah, honestly, the Imprisoned Falmer is the card that he's really missed this game. Works wonders versus Warrior, because it is just that one of the few big chunky minions, or just as much the Lawkeeper Polkelt / Dragonbane. Very, very powerful as well at this point in the game. The frustration here is the Volpatinga is just going to get farmed by the Barov. The secret does mean Zhym has to consider it, because it could be a freezing trap.
But now, shield block in hand. Zhym can just start pulling his way out of this game.
Funnily enough, if he can go face with a 3-1 to test it, then shield block's like the activator for Barov, which is kind of amusing.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah.
It's like you can actually just bank the damage.
Yeah. Okay. Feels safe at 10, I guess. Alright, sure.
Yeah, a little bit surprised there, because now if a freezing trap comes down, it's actually like harder to get Kargath to do its job. Because he's like played the rush minion first, which is actually a problem. Now there's a beast plus kill command. I imagine he's going to hold the 1-1. Oh, he's playing it.
No,
okay.
He just throws it out.
Ooh,
interesting.
Okay.
I think this is largely fine, because like I said, he is still some way off of just getting the job done with hero powers and kill commands, so he does need to stick and hit with a minion, right? He needs something to survive and go face in this scenario.
I think Zhym might have put himself in a more awkward spot than he needed to here with this Kargath like pre-play.
So he goes face, he deals with the freezing. He knows, I believe, the one remaining one is pressure plate at this point. Having already seen the pack tactics.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it on 10 cards. That's actually just a funny way to kill the card.
Yeah. That looks like the last hurrah for AyRoK, unless he can find Polkelt sharpish, and I'm not even sure that necessarily digs him out of this.
I think Polkelt could. There's still 2 Eaglehorn bows. I think no longbow. There's still a lot of damage left. If he gets Polkelt soon, there is still a chance. Even a Voracious Reader might get there.
Yep. It's true.
Again,
the issue is that Zhym can now use this little bit of freedom that he has to potentially counter pressure, right? Which I think is a really big deal. He'll reduce this clock on the Hunter very, very quickly himself.
Yep. I was actually a little bit surprised he didn't just play Deathwing there, because he knows the freezing's gone, right?
Oh, these draws. Yeah, you can see it in AyRoK's face. No Voracious Reader, no Polkelt, not even like drawing the Dragonbane naturally, which he would have taken here as well. So many good draws in his deck, so many crucial cards for the matchup as well that he's just not finding.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's got this literal turn now to draw, I guess not even Polkelt now that the weapon's live, right? Like, that's going to be too much of a problem as well. Oh. Okay. It's just... Sometimes games do get quite simple, and it is just go face. He has to just put all the damage he can. There's still Dragonbane. There's still a chance. No AoE yet for Armorsmith. No Taunt Dragon either. That's a big deal.
There is an ooze, though.
There is an ooze.
And this is essential, like I've mentioned it once already, but Zhym has to be counter-pressuring here because, you know, I talked about the hero powers cancelling themselves out from AyRoK's perspective. They're doing the same thing from Zhym's perspective as well. He's not pulling himself out of this game. So you can see now this kill command now gives AyRoK the potential to be able to put together a lethal here if he's able to pick up the right draws. Zhym has one more big burst of armor with the Galakron, and now picks up the shield block as well. And with this Armor Smith being able to trade multiple minions.
It's going to work out exactly how he wants to do this, because I believe he does know this is 100% pressure play.
He does, yes. There is that freezing trap remaining that we see in the hand, but they were both up at the same time, meaning the one that is remaining cannot be the other freezing trap.
Has to go for the shield block. There are certain draws that do leave him dead.
Yeah. I like this.
Go for some heavy armor. Good job.
There you go.
Suddenly, though, 16. The hope has gone, I believe. There aren't really the draws. Oh, Dragon Bane, like a turn too late. Maybe 2 turns.
Let me work my magic.
Maybe 5 turns too late.
I don't know, I think like 2-3 turns ago.
Yeah, no. Like, AyRoK has still been in this game for quite some time. It's very easy to sort of have the perception that once you survive the opening onslaught from Face Hunter, you've won the game, and it's just absolutely not the case. I mean, now you've won the game.
Yep, there we go.
Game is won. Well and truly won.
Not even going to go for the emotional lethal.
Yeah, exactly.
With the Karga.
I'm sorry, this is strictly incorrect. You never kill your opponent here. This is just, honestly, just not playing the mental game, because obviously I'm trolling. But yeah, as I was saying, I think there's a kind of a feeling. I think Zhym actually played towards this a little bit. I think there was an element of play. He wasn't fully on the play to survive kind of line, but there were things that I noticed where he was kind of leaning that way a little bit, where he went for a little bit of extra armor gain over a little bit of extra tempo maybe on a couple of turns. And I think that can potentially be a mistake against Face Hunter. I think the most effective way to shut them down is to counter race them when you have control of the board. Obviously, don't just try and race them from turn 1. You're going to lose that scenario. But
Risky skip on 1, let's go!
Yeah. Once you've gained control of the board, I think racing them back is very effective in most matchups, because they don't run out of damage. You can't sit around just saying, okay, I gain 2 this turn, I gain 3 this turn, I gain 2 this turn. Eventually, they'll stop being able to deal damage to me, right? No, that never happens. They are constantly able to deal huge amounts of damage to you. So trying to outlast them can be a little bit sketchy, and you do have to set up some kind of counter-offensive. But I think Zhym did an okay job of doing that with the Sackett Sapper and everything else that he threw out in the mid-game, just to generate a board that was setting up a clock for himself at least.
Exactly, and that's the difference, right? You need to take that one turn where you know you cannot die as a response from your opponent, and then play some minions and win the game. Because it's not like really anyone, there's a few, but not like anyone's playing Unleash either. So it's not like you can be like backwards punished for building building a board up quite wide as well. So yeah, you are looking at pretty safe there. But Zhym getting use out of some of those tech choices. The Kargath kind of, but the Ooze came in pretty clutch there, and just the risky skipper build in general, taking some nice little points there against the aggro, or the expected aggro lineup of AyRoK. That is just game number 1, though. We've got plenty more where that came from after the break.
How functional are the fingers/toes?
I'd love to have 7 fingers on each hand because I play guitar, and then I would be a better guitar player.
I don't need that many fingers to play Hearthstone, but I like being on the front foot, and I feel like 7 toes would help with that.
All right, if I can get 2 thumbs on each hand, I'm gonna have to go with the hands. I think with 2 thumbs, you could really grip a lot of things and do a lot of things. Imagine playing video games, the amount of keys you can hit on the keyboard just seems more practical. I can't imagine what I would do with the 7th toe that would be useful at all.
I would rather have 7 toes. I think it's just not that aesthetically pleasing to have 7 fingers, so.
I would be less weirded out by having more fingers. I don't think, I don't know, feet are kind of weird to me and I don't want more toes, and that probably would affect my balance, so I would definitely rather have more fingers. Plus, it would be way cooler to show people at like parties and stuff.
You know, I don't care about looking weird. The functionality, though, 2 thumbs, limitless, 4 thumbs in total, limitless potential.
Welcome back, everyone. We are ready to continue our match between Zhym and AyRoK. AyRoK losing that game number 1 with the Hunter. It did look very, very close indeed, and I think it just shows how powerful that Hunter can be, but Zhym just had just enough to get him over the line there, and as we did move into the end game, there were, the Armor Smiths were there, the Kargath Prime was there, so a flurry of options. But still, we do have more games coming up, and see if AyRoK's aggro lineup can get over the line here, as Zhym is also playing some mystery cards there. But looking at this Druid list, it does have some of those similar anti-aggro tools, like we see the 2 of Anubisath defenders often.
Yeah, I think this is about as anti-aggro a list as you can possibly run. Obviously, 1, survival of the fittest. No like extra greedy cards like Healthus or Omu or anything like that. Does have the wild growth in there as well for a little bit of extra ramp. Does not seem to have gone as extreme as, say, Psycho has done with what we presume are some anti-aggro techs, but I do think generally Zhym's lineup leans towards dealing with what he's expecting AyRoK to be throwing at.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it is just going to be good enough. Yeah, we are going to see the Hunter again. I was going to say I'm pretty sure he is queuing Hunter once more against this Druid. And again, this is a pretty solid matchup, but honestly, the fact that AyRoK is running that secret package of the 1 pack tactics and 1 pressure plate does make it a little bit easier for Zhym to deal with. Honestly, when you run double pressure plate, double freezing, this game is hard for Druid. It might just be that little bit easier now. See, imagine, Sol, talking of Psycho's list, right? Wolpertinger. Tour Guide Hero Power 1 down, you have a 1-1 to challenge the other one. How sick is that?
I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and find out, right?
not convinced, no?
Not sold on it yet. I'm gonna have to wait and see. Let's not forget, when it comes to randomly putting 1-mana 1/1s in your deck, Psycho has a pretty good track record up until this point. He has changed the metagame with Dr. Broom up until this point, so I'm not going to rule him out just yet, but we will wait and see.
Yeah. Faystalker, great follow-up here. Pretty much the key card you are looking for in any early mulligan. I would take Faystalker over any other card, actually, in the opening hand. I think a lot of people might look at, the Intrepid Initiate, but just having that Phase Stalker ready to go, especially in a matchup like this where your opponent is unlikely to have a good response, is pretty powerful. In some matchups, you generally want the Scavenger's Ingenuity first to make a bigger threat on turn 3, or coin it out if it's the Volpatinger. But here, absolutely great.
Do you have as much fun saying Volpatinger as I do? It's just a very fun word to say.
It is, isn't it? Just good. Just weird. Instead of, I think I was casting with Tara, and I called it Wapplating, and he loved it. I'm sure he loved it. It's great.
Oh, that is just objectively better.
Yep. Oh, okay. So Zhym gonna take a pretty rough turn next turn. He does get to ramp, of course, or potentially Gidra, but gonna take a slow-ish turn, and honestly, that's scary, especially with the tour guide.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I'm pretty sure he was playing ramp into ramp either way. He was coining wild growth into overgrowth, or blooming overgrowth into wild growth. So it's just a matter of like which cards you want to preserve, and when you would rather take your quote bad turn where you're facing the overload. And I think pushing the overload into the point where it's not affecting you because your turn stays the same anyway, right? Like you just wild growth and you move on potentially, or the Gidra if necessary, as you mentioned. I think it probably makes sense.
And the way Druid does win this matchup is by getting to its powerful things as quickly as possible. So even though this looks very rough, he does have to go for it there. I'm not sure, do we have information on that second secret at all?
The second secret was Pack Tactics.
Ooh, okay, so AyRoK didn't get hold of the better one going into the horror turn, which is Guardian Animals right now.
Yeah, currently there isn't the Guardian Animals to threaten those, so it might actually just work out pretty reasonably for him, because depending on the draw here, we could see like Thresher Broom, for example, or some kind of Gidra play, in which case Pack Tactics could end up being just as reasonable. Although with the Gidra spell play, obviously the pressure play is still incredibly effective.
And here, he does get it, of course, from the Phase Stalker, but he didn't necessarily have to have hero-powered that previous that turn, right? He could have gone for Sharpshooter and got more value from the Reader. He does draw into some pretty powerful tools for next turn as well.
And well, Zhym's just dead. Any real downside?
I was waiting for coin.
Coin? Yeah, okay.
Like, no!
The only downside AyRoK really has right now is that his hand isn't exactly dumpable to really synergize with the Voracious Reader that he has on board, but the upshot of that is that it means that you have a lot of high-value cards in your hand, right? Which is kind of what you want at this point of the game to be able to close things out.
Yeah, I mean, right now, he doesn't even have to hero power, right? I think getting the Felmar down could be worth a lot more.
See, Leok would have been ideal here, but...
Well, the Felmar's also really good to play around Thresher as well, right?
That's fair. But I mean, he already has, like, Freezing Trap, Pack Tactics, Pressure Plate, right? Like, how much more playing around
Druid's
things
always
does he
got
need
stuff,
to have?
Sol.
That's true.
This is why it's so good of a combo Freezing Trap into Pressure Plate. Like, what is Druid supposed to do?
Yeah. Like,
and the fact that, like, Pressure Plate just doesn't go off unless you have a minion is just so strong.
That's the thing. Like, Thresher Broom could still do some work, because obviously you can get the Freezing Trap on the Broom at that point and still get your Thresher attack through, but that was probably the solo out for Zhym at this point. And even then, you cannot then put your Iron Bark on the Thresher at the end of the turn, because then you just get blown up by the Pressure Plate. So the secret package is a huge reason of why this matchup is so good for Face Hunter. And this matchup is a huge reason of why Face Hunter is even being brought to tournaments right now, because Druid does just seem so ever-present.
And after all this, I do like this turn from Zhym. This is what I was looking at here.
Yeah.
Just blow the secret, get the Iron Bark on the biggest minion, and then say next turn he can innovate Survival of the Fittest, not to run in with the Thresher particularly, but just to give it more health if it somehow survives.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but it's what he has to do.
10 mana, give my Taunt 4 extra health. That's basically all he's doing.
Probably would prefer to just draw Broom. In a perfect world, it would be like overflow into Broom next turn as like the absolute dream that would dig Zhym out of this. But you can see pretty nice. Honestly, if you're struggling with Druid on ladder, just play this. This is pretty regular outcome for this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where he wants to put this hero power. I think it always goes on the Thresher here. He needs the Thresher to die.
He likely does with the hand he has right now, yeah. There would be other hands where maybe you can just hero power face, and then if the damage goes face, you're fine with that. But I think chewing
or even
through
if he had like a Pole Kelt to set up like the potential kill commands and stuff. But yeah, I think this is important here.
I concede.
Quite gonna cut it. It's gonna be a pretty easy game number 2. So although AyRoK lost game 1 very close, you do see why, at least for me, I think I said to you as soon as we saw the deck list all that I was surprised more players haven't brought Face Hunter, not only this week, but especially seeing that I think it did pretty well in MT last week as well, and I think it's just a good choice against a lot of the decks you can run into here. So it looked close versus the Warrior, even though Zhym was bringing that pretty powerful Warrior versus aggro, and it just kind of laughed at Druid, which is what Face Hunter does right now. So I am surprised that we don't see more of it in Europe this week. But AyRoK getting a win with it there means that he has 2 more decks to get a win with if he wants to continue here. Whereas Zhym also has his Druid to go once again. And I believe, just to triple check, yes, that Highlander Priest for him as well, which might be a bit of a problem once more against some of this aggro lineup from AyRoK.
Yeah, there is a lot of aggression coming through, but I do kind of agree with you for Face Hunter. You know, me and TJ, in rare form, agreed to collaborate on it as a pick for a deck that would be successful in the Masters Tour. I didn't quite live up to the highest expectations I had of it, but it did okay. And certainly I was expecting to see a little bit of it trickle into Grandmasters overall. And I think it's fair to say it has across most regions. We've been seeing it in APAC. We do have AyRoK here running it as well. And of course, we have had ball control just even before the fact running it. You know, he brought it into the last hero standing week as a snipe deck for the Druid, where he could actually just Q snipe because of the way that last hero standing works. Stuck with it a little bit after that, but has abandoned it this week. And so it's just AyRoK flying the flag for the Face Hunter at this point. But he has now picked up the win with it in the matchup that we expected to happen. Such a free matchup for Face Hunter against Druid most of the time. He'll move on now to this extremely aggressive build of Rogue with the Worgen Infiltrators thrown in there, Infiltrator Lillian, Self-Sharpening Sword, and even Sinister Strike, just maxing out the amount of aggression and damage that you can fit in the deck. Yeah,
this is like an even more aggro version of what this deck is normally, right? This is maximum, and I love it, honestly. I think it's just a personal preference from me, but it did sadden me to see that later on RDU is not going to be running this Rogue. He is going to be on the secret version and not like the list he was running beforehand, which I like. But I'm loving AyRoK, honestly, in Grandmasters this season, because he is just bringing some of the decks I enjoyed to watch, or at least enjoyed to cast, because I do think they're pretty high.
Yeah, I was following along with him on Twitter during the Specialist Swiss Week, where he very nearly qualified for broadcast while playing Aggro Rogue, I believe it was at the time, likely a list very, very similar to this. And I would see the announcement from our admins that the round was starting, and then 4 minutes later on Twitter, AyRoK would just be like, "Okay, done with my round. Okay." He posted a screenshot of just all of his game times, and it was just 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I was like, what is going on? Who is this person?
The hero we need, Sol, not the one we deserve.
Yeah.
Here, though, there is just Innovate Guardian Animals. Whenever that can happen, you can see AyRoK's response.
Pressure as well.
Yeah, this is when it all goes wrong. Taking a quick double or triple check on Zhym's build. Yeah, it's the one Teacher's Pet, double runner, double Thresher. So, again, fairly likely for the Thresher to come out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that we have been seeing, that even against aggro decks, you largely just want more Threshers than you do Teacher's Pets a lot of the time, because this is the swing that gets created, right? Like, I think with how good this draw was from Zhym, just any 2 beasts here would be absolutely fine, but if you're a turn or 2 slower than this, making sure you hit a Thresher off your Guardian animals is normally the #1 way that you can come back against aggro, even more so than hitting the Taunt a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think, honestly, the Taunt's there is... It's decent, obviously, but it's just another good 5-cost beast that is going to be value for your Guardian animals and makes it more consistent. But really, yeah, the Thresher, weirdly enough, is the anti-aggro card. Yeah. Just Pet, definitely just a filler, but here AyRoK does have to dig himself out of this, and I did wonder how he's going to approach that. He could just go Lillian. A decent start. He does have Jandis to follow up with as well next turn to maybe try and build a board.
Yeah, I don't know if building board is actually any kind of plan here. I think AyRoK just played 4 mana, 4 damage this turn, and then he's going to be purely counting in damage from this point. That Iron Bark completely shuts down that plan, but I wonder whether that was just front-loaded to try and get the 4 damage through, and then he was going to focus purely on Self-Sharpening Sword, Sinister Strike, Secret Passage to pick up more burn from that point. Absolutely not going to work now with the board state that Zhym has just been able to make this turn. So he's going to have to readjust, and honestly, I think he's going to have to readjust to the bottom right of his screen at this point.
Yeah, and it was an interesting point, right? Because I, funnily enough, saw it a slightly different way, where the Lillian could have done great work on board, and then you follow up with more minions, and then get the weapon and the Vulpera and everything ticking to maybe finish the game. Because I guess the way I approach the matchup against Druid, maybe stupidly, is if they play the Guardian Animals turn, they don't normally have like more board to build on after that. So if you cleared that off, then maybe you can start pushing again. Obviously, there was some pretty solid response there from Zhym.
And AyRoK not pleased with how this game has panned out, and rightly so. I think he's right to be a bit salty in this situation. Perfect curve from Zhym. He had the game pretty much shut down by that Guardian Animals curve, and then even the small things of like where that attack goes. Absolutely worst target.
Where's old Blade Flurry when you need it, right? Then
Dude,
you can start putting together a plan.
Actually imagine. You seen how big these self-sharpening swords get?
Yeah, it's great. Just see. Official request. Some matches that go pretty long. Do we need to speed up the overall game time in Hearthstone? It's like, okay, chuck Blade Flurry back in the mix. Okay, yeah, games last 2 minutes now. Nice. Even just the broom here as well just opens up whatever options for Zhym if he wants to just bat this Vulpera away and push maximum damage.
I think it's just Vate Wrath, right? And then just smash face for 8.
Whatever.
Why do you have to troll me like this, Alec?
One day, I hope it happens before it rotates out. I want Mount Cell to just summon like 4 Elix or something. It would just be great. I just want to hear Sol's response.
Yeah.
And that's not going to do it. That's going to be the game and the clap coming out. The slightly more negative clap than we used to see from a lot of the French players. Zhym takes game number 3, going 2-1 up, and yeah, like you said, fair for AyRoK to be a little bit upset with that game, but that is a percentage of Druid games, right? Like, that's why the deck gets played. Sometimes you do just get ramp into Guardian Animals, you get there, and that is enough to win you the game if your opponent can't respond very quickly. And that was the case in that one, and that leaves Zhym with just Highlander Priest left. And for me, Sol, I think that's what AyRoK should focus on, right? He has a very beatable deck, at least in my opinion, to try and get over the hill with this Rogue and Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Highlander Priest is a little bit slower, clunkier, a little bit more inconsistent, a little bit more exploitable than we see from the 2-Obs builds now. We do see there is an Acidic Swamp Ooze in there for Zhym, which could be helpful in the Rogue matchup, but there's no Kobold Sticky Finger. He hasn't gone that far with it. And there is quite a lot of clunky stuff in there that's probably not going to be super useful against some of these aggro decks. You look at that entire top end, you look at potentially even Mindrender or Lucia, just might be too slow in a lot of scenarios to really have an impact on the game against some of these aggro decks. So this is potentially still a couple of decent matchups here on the side of AyRoK.
Yeah, and I think we are going to see against a lineup like AyRoK's, the nerf of Cabal Acolyte really come into play, because its ability is obviously still very powerful, but its lack of like high health now makes it so much more killable for a lot of these aggro decks that don't want to waste damage taking down taunt minions. See here though, AyRoK Soul Demon Hunter, the approach is going to be that Altruist card we've seen pick up a little bit more common in the list now, and that one Consume Magic, which at least from what you and me have seen, Sol, has been doing a lot of work in these builds. Actually, a very clutch tool that might just become commonplace in most lists.
Yeah, I think it's very effective against Priest in particular, because Priest generally tries to fight back against you in two ways, with big Apotheosis minions that, even if you can kill them immediately, almost all of Demon Hunter's removal involves just attacking things with their minions or their face. In which case, obviously, as the Priest, you get multiple procs off of the Apotheosis that you've put on your minion if they have to do that. Consume Magic can remove that possibility. And then they also fight back by just Mind Flayer Kaj, just such an incredible tempo option at any stage of the game. And being able to shut down that incredibly effectively with the Consume Magic is a big deal as well. On top of the obvious application, which is, I don't like the way this taunt minion is looking at me, I'm going to ignore it and kill my opponent.
Here we get to see the early decision point here. Mana Feeder or not Mana Feeder on curve. It's going to go for the Chaos Strike. I don't mind this. I think the tipping point really for me was just getting that skull to the left ASAP. But I think if that skull wasn't there, I think we could have seen just a 2-3 being played out that turn.
I don't think I've ever played Panther over a Chaos Strike on turn 2. I did start experimenting with actually just tempoing it out as a 2-3 in matchups where early minion damage feels important. And early minion damage does feel important in this matchup, I would say. But I think, giving up a Chaos Strike there was probably a bit too much to also then give up the card draw from the Panther.
You don't pick the ones, see?
Okay, well, a lot of options there for extra heal for Zhym, which he must be reasonably happy with.
Yep.
And also, just this broom sitting in hand might not get used for a fair few turns yet, but it is a tool that is going to be very effective in just dealing with some of these minions that are starting to stack up some additional damage if required.
Oh, AyRoK. Oh, AyRoK. Sometimes in Grandmasters, we do see people just have their opponents just getting moderately lucky. And you see them, all kinds of theatrics on their camera where they're obviously getting salty that they're getting wrecked in this game. And they're really not. Like, the luck's pretty average on both sides.
Right.
AyRoK quite deserved in his reactions so far this series, I would say, based on the way this has gone. Picking up now the philosophy off of the Wand Maker, the absolute worst option in almost every scenario. It's not going super well for him.
Yeah, the only time I've ever worried about that card is when a Demon Hunter, I think today, actually went buffed Spirit Jailer into Spirit Jailer, and then when the Demon Companion into the AoE, like the Leok effect. I was like, oh my god, like I'm getting beaten up by these minions, what's going on? But outside of that one occasion, yes, it's definitely pretty rubbish. What's a tiny bit surprised he didn't just go for the soul shit there, honestly. It does set up the Shard Shatter next turn. There's that Kaj. Zhym could even copy a minion and rush it in to get like maximum value trades with these rush minions and push a bit of damage too. Or he could just use the mana to renew his own minions deck.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? It's like at 26, how much are you actually straight up valuing your own health total at this point? Like, any time you can get maximum value out of healing your own face with this deck in this matchup, you should probably think about it. Zhym chooses option C, which is none of the above.
A little bit surprised he didn't go for some kind of heal on the Vile Fiend there.
He's going to get punished by the Soul Shear combo, which, AyRoK did preserve this on the previous turn, wanting to set up a bigger swing turn with the Shard Shatter Mystic, and therefore Zhym did not have information about Soul Fragments in deck, about any kind of read being set up, so It's actually worked out pretty well for AyRoK here, swinging the board state back in his own direction, and he has now unlocked that skull perfectly on curve.
Yeah, pretty big deal, honestly. Zhym going for just banking a Soul Mirror so he can have an answer to Militia a little bit later on, or at any point in the game he sees fit.
Demons? Demons.
Such a beautiful shield.
I do continue to be surprised by these plays, and I'm probably just wrong, but I always want to play a skull as early as possible in this matchup. I feel like it pays off so much better, like the earlier you play it than it does like, oh, well, I can make a 5/5 and push some damage this turn, which I do see as a powerful play. But for me, the skull just unlocks so many potentially better turns in the near future.
I do like playing minions here. I think I've talked a lot about this matchup and how like minion damage is important, because if you just count up all the damage you can do with your face to the priest's face, that gets erased very quickly by just one decent apotheosis, right? I think it's the pressure of multiple minions over time that really starts to add up the damage in your favor. So I don't mind him foregoing the skull for a turn or two here.
Zhym does have the option of going Crunks into Coin Broom, of course, to go for 5/5. Does mean it just dies to pretty much anything.
Ooh. He's going to Broom this with the Apotheosis. Value trade, stick an Apotheosis minion.
Okay. I did wonder at the value of actually just using that turn to draw Galakrond as well.
Right.
Purely because he already has the Soul Mirror as the, oh no, my opponent then answers with a Militia. Again, it's like Consume Magic has a hidden effect, right? Where it just gets drawn when needed. It's so good.
Alas, poor warlock. Am I trapped? Am I yes?
Did wonder, just for a second there, he could have held the 1/3 just so he can play it on the same turn as Militia.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, especially since he already has the Militia in hand and he's kind of lined up and ready to go. His deck size is actually getting fairly small now when you account for the Soul Fragments as well, so he's actually fairly likely to draw one or more Soul Fragments on any given turn at this point. So having that just for 0, like I'm not sure how much value a 1/3 was on board at that point in comparison to just being able to jam the Sociologist.
And here come the big turns. I do quite like the way AyRoK is doing this, honestly, because right into a Murazond, this turn is actually a lot less powerful than it looks on Zhym's side, right? To actually Murazond back, and then he can use, Twin Slice, Blade Dance, whatever, to follow up with the turn after. So I actually quite like this. We do see, though, the earlier Soul Mirror that Zhym picked up from the Renew, just saying, nope, I want a Soul Mirror in time for turn 7. Pay off for him here.
That Elucia is so dangerous right now, Raven. Obviously, Zhym doesn't know, but there's currently a discounted Skull card in the hand, which we can see is Kane. But there's also currently the Eldraki Warblades, the Lifesteal weapon alongside Twin Slice that Zhym can steal and potentially throw out here himself for an enormous burst of healing over time as well.
Oh, yeah. And he knows it's in there, right? Because he knows what deck list is against. He's playing the Highlander with that Lucia. But he's got to make that call. Honestly, to me, it looks like AyRoK has the damage to just go into these 2 turns. He even has the Marrow Slicer for next turn to re-equip. So I do like this. Just push all in. You've got 2 turns worth of mega damage, so start using that up.
Yeah, completely agree. Right now, Zhym does not have an answer to this situation in his own hand.
And to be fair, although we could see it would be a very solid Elucia, or potentially a good Elucia turn, the second you have to just hard cast Elucia if you're Zhym right now. to have like the mega turn. But the second it's not that, you just lose, right? So there has to be some in between, or at least just risk involved with Zhym playing this. He does go for it. He does have Shard Shatter. He can play along with a Twin Slice.
Would you rather play the Shard Shatter here,
Go
though?
for Blade Dance instead.
Right, like it's not necessarily about your own efficiency, it's about using the cards you don't want your opponent to have anymore. Yep. So I would have, tried to get as much damage as possible out of the hand there. Zhym obviously doesn't know, but he would have been, I think, rewarded a little bit by not using the penance before he shot over. He might have potentially had a better turn, although I think he's still one off at that point. Yeah, he is, of like the nutty turn where he gets the Warblades down and Blade Dances as well on top of everything else. So using the penance there, obviously from Zhym's perspective, he's just dealing with the unknown, so he wants to maximize healing as best he can. But that Warblades going back to the opponent, I think, is something he'll be fairly sad about here.
Yeah, I actually think he still would have been fine, right? Because he could have just swung with the Warblades and not had to use double Twin Slice and still clear everything off, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but like as I was pointing out at the time, tough choice to make, because the second that turn isn't good, probably just die and lose the game straight up. So definitely, again, Zhym taking the halfway option and still getting rewarded for it. AyRoK now is just Galakroned because
we've seen this happen once already, where the Demon Hunter, via the Priest Galakron, stolen from this exact situation, did not actually kill the Priest all game. They actually just managed to end the game through value over time. But I think with this initial push on the board with 2 8/8s and then backed up by Amber Watcher, that might be a little bit of a limiting factor this time around. AyRoK is just not hitting the juice. And suddenly, he's just on a 2-turn clock coming back the other way.
Yeah, he is piling on the pressure, though, so the big question for Zhym is, can he attack and go face to set up 2-turn, potentially 3-turn, whilst not dying on his end? He does have the Amber Weaver, which is a big deal. The Holy Nova, fantastic as well.
He has Taunt Amber Watcher this turn. Like I think he can absolutely race in this spot.
Taunt Nova Amber Watcher this turn.
Yeah.
Better.
The fact that nothing got traded here makes me pretty confident that no trades are happening. If they were going to happen, you would have absolutely done it first there. To take your pick of the minions that you wanted.
Yeah, I think he would have forced into a Lightwell probably at that point, right, if he was going to trade.
Very possibly.
Now, uphill climb doesn't even cover it for AyRoK. Well, it works with Altruis. You can't believe it. It looked so good. A very clear 1-2 punch, which is one of the ways you can just decimate Priest. But that Elucia was just enough to get there.
What if I give up?
That is it. Zhym takes the win 3-1 and goes up to a 2-1 score in Division B, which is a huge deal. Again, in Division B, it's not just go 1-1 and it'll be fine. It is you win your matches or you go home. So pretty big deal there for Zhym. And honestly, I don't want to say the word brave turn there because that was just calculated for Zhym, but a turn that was tough with that Elucia paying off for him greatly, because the second he skips, thinks it might be too risky or not, he just dies to the Twin Slice push, right? So really big payoff, and one of the very few better uses of Elucia I've actually seen work out in Grandmasters.
Yeah, like in that moment, it was do or die for Zhym. Like he can look at every other play he had that turn, and he was just dying, right? Like it was going to happen, so he kind of felt like he had to go for it. But I can understand some other people like looking at their hand and be like, "Wow, I give my opponent Dragon Queen, Alexstrasza, and Galakron. Like these are the best cards in my deck. I can't be doing this." Like, no, you have to survive this turn. You need to do something powerful to win back this board state. He was able to do just enough to get over the line because that's all he needed. And it's an underrated part of the Elucia swap in aggro matchups. Is not only do you sometimes get to throw away a lot of their damage